Merry Christmas, everyone. And since it's Christmas, I thought we should do something lighter, maybe less controversial. So let's talk politics. As you all know, what happened last week, the Supreme Court of Colorado said Trump can't even be on the ballot. Well, the left loved that. Democracy in action. Yeah, he's getting what he deserves. Meanwhile, the right went crazy, saying the republic is at stake. This is unprecedented. Well, the fact is, it isn't unprecedented, and the republic isn't at stake, and this may not even be democracy. But is any of this new? The answer is no. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the curse of the eighth decade. In about every 80 years, America goes through a big transition. Well, let's go back two of those cycles. Let's go back to the 1860s. Abraham Lincoln was running for president, and he wasn't allowed on the ballot, not in one state, in 10 states. Alabama, Florida, Georgia, all the Confederacy wouldn't even let him on the ballot. And by the way, you know how they did ballots back then? The states were responsible for printing only the paper and the thickness of the paper. Meanwhile, the parties themselves decided what went on the paper. And so the parties got to decide how the candidates were listed, the little symbols that went with it. You don't think there was any fraud there? Meanwhile, they could even make it any color they wanted. So, for example, in the Union Party of Virginia, now the Union Party in Virginia probably wasn't very popular, as you might guess. They printed their ballots in pink, hoping that it would encourage people to show their support for the Union. It went exactly the opposite. People thought, if I vote a pink ballot, everybody's going to know how I voted. They might hurt me. They might kill me. So when the election came, Lincoln was on the ballot in Virginia. He got 1% of the vote. That was it. And by the way, how did they vote? How did we get the term ballot? This is a little sidebar. Ballot actually comes from an Italian word, ballotta, meaning a small ball. Here's what they used to do. Back in Greek days, you voted with pebbles. Everybody took a pebble, and there were two urns set up. And they would then put their pebble into the urn, and then you just counted the pebbles. The Italians raised the game. They decided to make them chic. They made these little round marbles and kind of made them ornate. This was my marble kind of thing. A small ball. And that's how they voted. They put them into their urns. Even our Congress in the 1800s made clay marbles, which they then put into wooden boxes to determine the ballots. Anyway, that's where we got the term. Who got to vote? Remember back in the 1860s, only men got to vote. Men voted on behalf of their entire households. Now, when I told this to Walt, you know what he said? As it should be.
Ah, great. No, I didn't.
Okay,
hey,
maybe.
I did not say that.
All right, maybe he didn't, but I know he thought it. So,
No, I didn't.
Anyway, only men got to vote. Black men got the vote in 1870 because the Confederacy, they didn't want to give up on all that free labor. Women got the vote in 1920. You know what? Native Americans got the vote in every state, not until 1957. So we've had issues with voting that go way, way back. Now the bridge. What does it mean for today? Okay, let's just play this out. Let's say Trump wins. Does anybody believe that half the nation is going to accept him as the president? I have my doubts. Let's say Biden wins. Does anybody believe the other half of the nation is going to accept him as the president yet again? This is exactly what happened during the Civil War. Lincoln was elected. The Confederacy didn't even consider him the president. And by the way, trending on Google right now, new Civil War. Are we going to have a civil war? This kind of thing. Are we going there? I hope not. I don't believe we will. Nonetheless, to say the nation's not divided isn't realistic. So what does this mean for markets? Well, if you go back to the Civil War, how did the stock market perform? Believe it or not, it wasn't great and it wasn't bad. For the people who say war is good for the economy, actually it didn't work out with the stock market because of all the volatility, because of false rumors based on every battle, misinformation, sound familiar? People stopped having faith in the market. Plus, the markets would close. The government would just shut down the markets if it were too volatile and then arbitrarily decide when to reopen them. So volume dropped dramatically because no one really knew if it were honest anymore and if they would ever open again and get your money back. So what did do well? Well, they were pushing war bonds, as you might guess. Those did actually not so hot either. The Confederacy, of course, their war bonds went to zero. And in the North, because they printed so much money, those bonds weren't worth much either. Gold and silver fared very well, however. So take that as a lesson maybe for what's coming up in 2024. And with that, Merry Christmas. I believe we're in the right things. Today is gold. Gold's up about $30 an ounce. It's a good day. So Merry Christmas, and I'll turn it over to Walt.